Well, welcome everyone to our Kepler College Astrology Book Club author Q&A. My name is Misty Lane and I'm your book club admin, and I'm here today with the wonderful Nadiya Shah, author of our September book of the month of Ravens and Dragonflies, Outer Planet Transits Through the Houses. Nadiya is an award-winning astrologer, author, media personality, and one of the few people in the world who hold an MA in cultural study of cosmology and divination. That's pretty impressive, from the University of Kent, United Kingdom. She was also named one of the top 12 astrologers on the planet by French Vanity Fair, crowning her a pioneer in video astrology. And she's the author of several books, having launched Synchronicity Publications in 2013, dedicated to written content celebrating astrology and the new age. And I've been watching your YouTube channel for a while now, and especially while reading this book, one thing that I really admire about you is just how infectious your passion is, and especially while reading, I was just so impressed in how you were able to maintain that same voice in your writing style as well. So this book is just an extremely engaging book to read, and it seems that our book club members also really resonated with the topic. So for those of you who are streaming in, I will be keeping an eye on the chat, so feel free if you have any questions to comment away, and we'll be sure to answer them in the Q&A. But Nadiya, can you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and your own relationship to the outer planet?
Um, I don't think anything brings people to astrology quite like the outer planets. Normally, people come to astrology because they feel like something's happening and it's hard, and they
Mm-hmm.
want to know it's going to be okay, right? I'm paraphrasing the late, great Jonathan Cainer here. He didn't specifically say outer planets, but he said people come to astrology because they want to know it's going to be okay. And I think, and I've learned over the years that what leads people to want to know that is because they don't feel that, and they don't feel that because some outer planet transit is taking place for them. But what I really liked about the idea of outer planet transits through the houses is that it encapsulates a phase of your life and a period of time of your life. And when you reflect back, all else being equal, let's say you're using equal houses, right? Whether it's whole sign, whether it's just equal houses. Again, all else being equal, I know those houses can really vary if you're using, for example, Placidus, or
Oh
you're
yeah.
born really north or you're born really south. But you're going to have a Uranus move through a house for 7 years, right? That's a 7-year transit of Uranus moving through a sign. And if you think back on your life, you might be able to recognize how every 7 years it felt like some things really changed. And then just as they got calm, these other things really started to change. Or maybe it was you, like a more rebellious spirit, but it was sort of directed in a particular way that it came forward, a particular area of life. And it's quite amazing to reflect back and see, even before astrology was part of your path, for example, to see how those transits were actually speaking. And I mean, I think about how many people have come to me because they're having a Pluto transit, for example. Pluto will bring people to astrology like, like it's incredible because it is Pluto. And I think all of the outer planets in their own way, they remind us of, what I mean, look, Freud would call it the cruelty of fate. And I don't mean to make it sound dire, right? Or dystopian,
Mm-hmm.
just that we are so fortunate in much of the world now, and more of the world than ever before. More of us have more agency over our lives than ever before. And yet, those things that really come to, shape us, define us, the things we overcome that show us something of who we are and our strength, very often involve stuff showing up that we had no power over. They involve experiences that remind us how powerless we actually can be. And very often there's a characteristic of loss there as well. And I think that is so true. When studying the outer planets and putting this book together, I had that realization like, oh my goodness, all of the outer planets, even if it's a trine to your sun at the same time, when an outer planet moves through a house, there is going to be transition, and transition means loss as well in order to get to the other place. But it's part of, I think, how me personally, I'm a person with a lot of faith, right? And I really am so passionate about all of us having our own right to our own spiritual relationship, and the right to define whatever the divine is going to be for you, however you understand that energy. And for me, I think of, or if I think of, if I have to, which I sometimes do, have to remind myself that everything is happening to move me towards a greater embodiment of higher energy, of greater love, of greater wisdom. All of it is part of it. It makes it a lot easier to navigate the moment, but also to
Mm-hmm.
spot the opportunities. But that doesn't mean there isn't also powerlessness and pain in the middle of a journey that ultimately empowers and leads you to your potential of being more loving, of being more wise, and that is a great power to have as well.
Ah, wow. Okay. I just love how you put that. And you do have such a good point of the powerlessness of it all, but also that just that balance of powerlessness and then being empowered. And this was one of the questions that I really wanted to ask you, just because along my own journey of learning astrology and implementing it in my life, it did feel like it granted me at least a feeling of more control as to how to navigate things. But especially when it comes to the outer planets, it feels so much harder. They're so much farther away. They seem so much bigger than us. Whereas like I had that recent Mercury retrograde through my eighth house. I reevaluated my finances and got on top of my budget. Whereas with the outer planets, they take so long to transit a sign. Do you recommend really intentionally working with the outer planet transits, or is just having that awareness of what to expect enough?
It's always good to work with energies because
Mm-hmm.
two things come to mind when you ask that question. So one is, I remember years ago as a baby astrologer, right? Going back many years. And one of the very first interviews I did when I started my YouTube channel was Stephen Forrest, right? Stephen Forrest, so generous, so loving a person. And I tell you, I know he seems like that online and in videos you might find online, but he really is like that behind the scenes. And he is one of our living legends, right? Or like right
Mm-hmm.
now. And I remember in a workshop with him, he was saying, like, you want to figure out how to honor an energy because it's there for a reason. And I have come to understand through other conversations. I'm thinking in particular of Cameron Allen, who's this, really very shining, bright astrologer. And he teaches at Kepler as well. And he teaches at my school as well. And he does medical astrology. And he and I did an interview the other day. It's on my YouTube channel. And we were talking about this idea of honoring whatever planet is asking for or asking to be honored. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's just finding balance. But, I've really learned that if you don't honor a planet in some way, it is going to say, you better pay attention to me. Here I am. You better show up. And
Yep.
I'll tell you a couple of things. One is, I had a few interesting energies play out recently, and it was, just Pluto dipping into Aquarius. Oh my God, I'm so like, I am feeling like, oh my God, I hope I'm going to be okay. Of course, I'm going to be okay, right? But I can understand, how scary it feels.
Mm-hmm.
And having my own experiences of um, Pluto and then my Chiron return at the same time, and all of it sort of came to a head this summer. And the profound feelings of of physically not being strong, of the powerlessness in that. It just gave me so much reverence and compassion for people who live through those experiences, and they're part of their everyday experience. But I also trust that there's something there that, I'm going to be able to use to in some way be better, be stronger, more loving, more wise. But yeah, you got to honor those transits. I mean, right now we have Mars newly, not an outer planet, of course, but Mars has moved into Cancer. And that's my first house. That's my rising sign. And I remember very clearly baby astrologer me listening to Stephen Forrest, and Stephen Forrest saying, you've got a Mars transit and it's going to be extended. Make sure you're doing something physical, you're getting some aggression out, or else life is going to present you with those moments of summoning that within you. And I just never forgot that. And I found that to be so true with all of the planets. But it is hard to do that with outer planets because they very often have a will of their own. And I think a part of the sacred lesson of them is acceptance of the things that we don't have power over.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I totally see that. And yeah, just honoring I definitely see what you're saying when it comes to honoring those planets, especially with the Pluto and Capricorn. It's been in my first house since I was like 13, and it's been that huge dance with intensity and the transformation, and how can I bring that to a more positive manifestation in my life by working with it intentionally. And it's on its way out, what, in a few months, in November, right? And it's just, I'm in that reflection period and gearing up for it to enter my second house. But yeah, even though there's a lot of fear attached to the outer planet transits, I've noticed, but having survived my own first house Pluto transit,
Yeah, yeah.
you can survive it. It is, there's a lot of intensity, but it's not the end of the world. And now I do
Right.
feel more empowered that I can handle difficult experiences, especially.
Do you feel like a badass now? On the other
Oh, yeah.
side of it, do you feel like, oh, I'm a badass, nobody can mess, I know who I am now? Like it
Yeah,
just changes you on that level. Yeah.
it does. And especially, and I especially at first learning astrology, I had that difficulty when it came to identifying how did this long-term transit impact me. But I do notice, just like comparing myself to other people of my own age and seeing those behaviors that I saw in myself before Pluto was there, I'm like, wow, I really have grown. I am completely different. But how do you, I guess, when it comes to working with the more positive manifestations, and especially when it comes to learning how to release that control, do you have any insight on that you'd like to share?
How to release the control. Well,
Yeah.
if you're asking specifically about the planets themselves, I'll give you an example. Again, going way back, baby astrologer me, I
Hmm.
went through this phase where I decided to do like a planet a year, right? One planet a year. And I really would seek to connect with its energy deeply. And actually, a lot of what I did, what that was like for me, right? I actually, one of my books is called Prayers to the Sky, and I consider it like astrological magic light. And it just sort
Hmm.
of gives you some ideas of what I put on my altar, right? So the year of Venus, I had Venus, a statue of Venus on my altar, and I had like rose quartz there and pink candles and different things like that. And that became like sort of a power center for me to constantly remember that this is the year of Venus, the year of Venus. And I did that. And I'll tell you, those years when I had outer planets, those were some pretty intense years also. Right? Oh my God,
How,
the year of Pluto, the year of Pluto. I remember because, well, then again, look, Pluto was conjunct my moon. And so
mhm,
I was like, well, I got to choose Pluto for this. And boy, was that ever a brutal year. And so I want to bring that level of compassion, but then like towards myself and anybody going through that. But of course, there are ways to embrace the transformative qualities of these planets because ultimately what they want you to do is really be you. Like that's it. That is it with the outer planets. They want you to get authentic. And where it is that you've accepted the superficial in your life, one way or another, it's going to go. It's got to go. If you choose not to engage the journey, then it's just going to hurt.
mhm,
But if you engage the journey consciously, if you say, okay, Neptune, you're coming in here, you're going to wash through my life. The tides will come in, but the tides will go out as well. And ultimately, I have to practice faith through all of this. And also know, especially with a Neptune transit, you don't realize what's happening in the moment. It's kind of afterwards that you go, oh my God, I can't believe especially the main thing I hear people say, the sentiment, whether they use the words or not, with Neptune is, I can't believe how much I sacrificed, right? That's the
mm,
thing people say. I sacrificed so much. I sacrificed myself in particular in that area of life. Neptune's moving through your sixth house. I sacrificed for my coworkers and, for just to keep a job. I sacrificed my health in particular, right? These are all very sixth house. That's just an example. But it's like
mhm,
in the moment, you don't always realize it. And it's a different sacrifice with Saturn. With Saturn, it's about balance. It's about, you know what? It's more delayed gratification is what Saturn represents. Like, I'm going to sacrifice this right now because I believe I'll make a bigger gain later on. But with Neptune, it's not necessarily like that always the case, right? And yeah, with Pluto, I think on the other side, it's like, I can't believe how hard I was holding on to something that doesn't
mhm,
even really matter, right? That is really not even what actually was, right? You really get to see the underbelly, if you will, and that shows you what's really there. I think about it in the experience of love, right? In love, you meet somebody and it's all projection, and you think you've met this person and it's going to be like, oh my God, I feel like I've known you in past lives. I feel like I've known you forever. I feel so connected to you. And it's incredible that moment you realize that, oh my God, I've been projecting a lot of stuff here. That isn't who this person is at all. Because in some way you've had to like turn over and see what's under the rock, right? What's the underbelly to
mhm,
it. But if you're able to see beauty there, if you're able to see love there, it stays. That's the thing. And you're able to understand how even what's squirming under the surface is part of its beauty, is part of the love that's on offer here. Then at least you know it's real on the other side. And I think with Uranus as well, it is like, I can't believe I denied this truth. That's what it tends to be.
ooh,
I denied this truth, and I'm not going to do that anymore, or I cannot do that anymore. You don't have the ability or you don't have the choice to do that anymore. But that tends to be the thing that people say. Yeah, it's that superficialness that I think, I remember, and I know this isn't the case for everybody, but
right.
ago in university, I worked at a call center, huge company, Canadian company, and one of the big, media slash mobility companies, basically. And I remember living sort of in front of their head office. I would have to go way out to the call center, and then I got transferred to the head office in particular. And, I would see these people every day coming in, every day. And sometimes you'd see people like really happy, really excited, really getting into what they're doing and being at peace with it. And they were where they were supposed to be. And then I saw people who, their desks were just covered with pictures of someone they really loved. maybe a
Mm.
kid, maybe their relationship, because they needed to remind themselves why they're doing it and help them to get through the day. And then you saw people who just looked numb, like they got up every day, they went to that coffee shop, they walked in, they had their rituals in place and that helped them, but it was like a part of them had gone on automatic, and you could see that they weren't able to or willing to really feel so much. And I think that it's that space, because all of us can relate to that in one area of life or another. At some points in life or another, we get that way. And then an outer planet transit comes and it says, oh no, you can't do that anymore. You can't be on automatic anymore, because
Mm-hmm.
awareness, right? And it's a game changer. You can't unsee once you see. You can't deny the truth once it's right there in your face, undeniable, right? And I think that's part of what outer planet transits are meant to show us something about ourselves. Interestingly, I will also say this before we go on to the next question, and that
Mm-hmm.
is, I think it's incredible. I really believe that the more we understand about ourselves, about human consciousness, the more we understand about how expansive the world is. The more human beings have been able to exercise their free will, embrace a sense of agency for their lives, the more they've been able to do that, the more vast we understand the universe to be. We understand our power more vastly, our potential more vastly, and then we see more planets and more asteroids and just how huge the cosmos is. And I think it is rather remarkable, the huge leaps in consciousness that happened whenever one of these outer planets were discovered. And we see it, right? These huge leaps
Mm-hmm.
of consciousness take place. The discovery of Uranus brought with it this shift of, it's what's called the Cartesian split. And so up until right around the discovery of Uranus, if you were walking down a street and you saw a flock of birds, that meant something. Like that was symbolic of something in your internal life. That was a
Mm-hmm.
spiritual message in some way. And then Uranus gets discovered and it says, okay, stuff is just stuff. I think, therefore I am. Spirit is one thing, matter is another thing. And there have been great things that have come about, right? Equality has come about because of that. That's why Uranus is associated with equality, because it was from that place that we could start to recognize, what, that divine spark, it runs through all of us, regardless of what the matter of our physical selves might look like. And this has been wonderful for, like, across the board. More and more we own this, right? More and more we're able to recognize the divine in each other, which is amazing. But there were really bad things that happened with it, because it's like, okay, if it's just stuff, you can do anything you want with it, right? It doesn't really matter. And that allows like abuses of the environment, abuses of animals, like all of these things happen because stuff is just stuff. And so it's like we go way overboard. And so humanity sort of went way in that direction. All this scientific breakthrough, and that's one thing, and spirit is another. We get the separation of state and church, as they called it.
Mm-hmm.
But then we went so far one way that it was like we as human beings were longing to remember the strength of our spirit and our soul. And so we discover Neptune. And Neptune actually was discovered, like it was a formula. There was like this game going on around the world where people were like figuring out the right formula to figure out where the next planet is going to be discovered. And that's how Neptune came about. It's almost like it was predicted. And then they went and looked at it, and there was Neptune. And yeah. And I think that really does describe what Neptune came to encapsulate, this idea that, we have that need for spiritual meaning and spiritual connection and spiritual purpose. But of course, we also went way too far with that in terms of scammers, people abusing that privilege, right? Which is also very Neptunian
Oh,
as well.
the
And
social media comment section scammers. Oh, goodness.
oh, yes, that too. That could be part of, well, look, social media really expanded with Neptune in Aquarius. That was when social media became this thing that was like water. It was everywhere. It was pervasive. It
Hmm.
became part of us. And that's part of what Neptune represents.
Oh, yeah.
Pluto was discovered in times when, on the one hand, psychology, right? Understanding the
Hmm.
deeper truth, but also we saw how cruel we can be to each other.
Oh,
Immense
yeah.
cruelty was taking place, right? World War II. We saw just how cruel we could be, how cruel the world could be. And so I think that the willingness to see it, it doesn't mean it didn't exist before. There was absolutely people being very cruel to others. But the fact that we were willing to see it and acknowledge it was the change of consciousness that we needed in order to have that correspond and coincide with the discovery of Pluto. And it's fascinating to consider that as well. How we live those myths, I think, is what astrology really is about. Yeah.
Ah, that's beautiful. Okay. Following up with that, let's touch on you were talking about the discovery of the planets, and this is another question that we had. I know some astrologers taking that the more traditional route are a little bit more hesitant to attach rulership over a sign when it comes to the outer planets because they're more recently discovered. There's not that um, so many thousands of years of research backing it up. What's your opinion on that? Do you think that they rule any such sign or co-rulers, or what are your thoughts on that?
I consider them co-rulers, right? But
Okay.
I always take the traditional ruler first, actually. So for
Hmm.
example, if you're trying to find the chart ruler and you've got an ascending sign that is Pisces or Aquarius or Scorpio, well, I'm going to go to the traditional ruler first before I look at, and then I consider it a secondary layer to look at the modern ruler.
Okay.
But I'm reminded of the late great Jeffrey Cornelius, my former professor who passed away recently. How much I loved him, how brilliant he was. And I remember him saying that, with the modern planets and all these asteroids and things, what happens is that we forget the different layers of nuance that the planets actually hold, and all the ways in which their energy can come forward, or they might manifest in our lives through aspect. And I remember him saying that, if something is happening in a person's life, you should be able to see it just using the traditional planets, and certainly use the outer planets as well. But you shouldn't have to really reach for all kinds of, like, because if you throw enough asteroids in there, I mean, the chart becomes unreadable, right? All of the
Right.
aspecting everything, yeah. And I never forgot that. Like, I consider a lot of other aspects that might happen as sort of another layer. And so if you're looking at outer planet transits through the houses, remember, it's like this slow undercurrent of energy.
Mm,
And like I said, it defines a phase of your life. It's not necessarily the experience of your life in the same way that a transit of Mars or even a transit of Saturn is going to be. Those traditional planets, they can show you a lot about what's happening, but the outer planets can show you a lot of how you're changing, about how you feel, about what's transforming, and where it is that it feels messier than it might otherwise. Do you think the ancients, yeah, it's a very recent phenomenon where we even have time to contemplate what feels messy, right? People
mhm.
were too tired. They were working on the farm and everything. They weren't busy thinking about what do I feel and do I really like this
Yeah,
person.
we're having those first world problems.
Exactly, right? The first world problems, and the outer planets, let's just say they are very first world, aren't they?
Mm.
Yeah, yeah. And so
Yeah,
yeah, sometimes
sometimes
again. But that doesn't mean they don't hurt. And that's not to diminish the
Exactly.
experience of the outer planets. Yeah.
Ah, wow. Yeah, sometimes, especially when we have those experiences, those first world problems, it's like before those outer planets were discovered, they didn't have time to worry about that. And now I'm like, I really wish I didn't have time to worry about that
I
sometime.
don't know. I don't know. I
But it is a
like
blessing though.
it is such a blessing. I like being in the modern world, but I am an
Yes.
Aquarius, right? So I I just feel like the future just gets better and better, in my humble opinion. But I'm thinking of it from different perspectives. I'm thinking of it from the perspective of equality on so many fronts, right? Of course, the types of equality that we want to see, but there's also a sense of being able to do more of what you want to do with your life,
Yes.
regardless of your social location or regardless of where you started, to be able to have a sense of moving your life in a direction that at least works better for you than it would if you didn't have a choice, right? I was watching
Exactly.
again, I was watching something, and there was a guy, and he was saying about how, oh, people are really suffering and men are really suffering in the modern world, and we've lost what we had traditionally and what the world was like in the 40s and 50s. And he was talking about it like it's this horrible thing that we're in the modern world. And I was thinking, like, and I even left a little comment to say, and I normally don't even comment on stuff like that, but it
Hmm.
was just such a surprise to see that content on the particular channel that I was watching. And I said, it is it's almost a delusion. It's so selfish to only think, oh, wow, yeah, life was so much better. Was it though?
For them, for that, from
Yes.
their perspective,
Yeah, but I mean,
but not for the rest
I
of
just think
us.
about how much I had an experience at the start of 2023, and I went to a part of the world that I'd never been to before. And I saw up close, what life is like for women um, who live under an entire system that seeks to erase them, to make them invisible. And I
Hmm.
still feel so much when I think about it. I just glimpsed it, and I felt traumatized by just
Yes.
glimpsing it for just a little bit. And a lot of what it kicked up for me was generational stuff, right? I thought about the experiences of my grandmothers and even my mom and stuff like that. And she talks about the sexism that she experienced growing up. And I am just so used to moving through the world as a Canadian woman. I've been so used to having this automatic assumption of equality, that to be confronted by the fact that it hasn't always been like that, and it still is not like that for perhaps the majority of people in the world. It was just so it shook my world. It really did. It really shook my
Hmm.
world. And I mean, for 3 months, I cried every day, every single day.
Oh,
Yeah. It
oh
was
my
so sad.
gosh.
Yeah. And so when people say it was so much better then or then or then, I think, no, the future is
Yeah,
better. We
the
got to
future
keep
is
moving forward.
better.
Yeah.
What you just said, it really reminds me of, and I forget who said that quote, but it's a feminist quote. It goes something like, "I'm not free until all women are free." And so yeah, I totally relate to what you were saying there, but I do think the future is going to be better. Um, but a lot of people who are comfortable need to be catching up to that, you know? Um,
But I'm hoping, I look, Pluto and Aquarius. Aquarius is fixed air. That is pure
mhm,
mind. That is pure thought. And on a level of mind, we are all equal. And I mean that, like, all else being equal is what I mean when I say we're all equal. Of course, some people are more intellectually driven, some people are more technically driven or whatever, that's fine. But on that level of mind, there's a great equality. And I think that is part of our understanding of ourselves that's evolved as well. And I think that's why we've manifested the internet, for example, right? We've
mhm.
manifested the internet as a reflection of our understanding of our own consciousness and our ability to connect with other people, which I think is really profound. And I think that, and I hope that Pluto in Aquarius, takes that to even higher levels where on the level of mind, we are free. It's known, and it's been said by many a philosopher for millennia, that the only place you're really free is in your mind. And so my hope is that that ends up being a basis for greater equality around the world. I really hope so.
I hope so too. Oh my goodness. As far as the upcoming outer planet transits, this is another question we had, but let me see. So a lot of astrologers out there are saying that 2026 is going to be way more intense than 2020 because of these outer planet changes. So there's a lot of the fear mongering going on again with that. And you can see it happening right now in global events with kind of what you were just touching on. A lot of people digging their heels in, wanting things to stay how they used to be. Um, what do you think, as far as like a more hopeful future, what do you think these next upcoming outer planet transits might bring us for the global collective?
That's a great question. And
Hmm.
yeah, what you're referring to, that major configuration, is called the Grand Sextile. And
Hmm.
it is really going to be lit up in 2025. We'll start to feel it, but oh my God, are we ever in it? 2026, even 2027 as well. At least next year, Saturn is going to be in the mix also. And I think this is going to be such a huge shift. It was years ago, like 5, 6 years ago, I created a video called Decade Ahead Horoscope. And I think about the things I talked about there. I was looking at this configuration back then. And I was saying that it's going to start like if you think about what happened, I'm going to look at the 2020s here as an overall,
Right.
because we started 2020 with the conjunction of Saturn and Pluto. And that took place in the sign of Capricorn. And the last time that happened was when, I mean, it was right around the time of what's called the Protestant Reformation. And when you think about what the Protestant Reformation actually represented, it was such a revolutionary movement at the time because it said you don't need an intermediary between you and the divine, you and God. You can read the Bible for yourself and you can decide what that means based on your own heart, based on your own relationship. And this was blasphemous. Like this was unheard of at the time. And you can't have the American Revolution or the French Revolution without first having that shift in consciousness that said, no, I decide my relationship with God and nobody else. That was such a huge move, right? And then you think about also this series of great conjunctions of Jupiter and Saturn, because they kind of go in cycles, right? They stay in a certain element over the course of about a 200-year period, and then they change up and they go through different elements. And so the last major cycle we had of the great conjunction, Jupiter-Saturn, took place in earth signs. And so that's when we saw this, huge growth in industrialism and in capitalism, the Gilded Age, all of that stuff, right? But now we've started in 1980, we had the Great Conjunction in Libra. And that brought with it, reach out and touch someone. That was, I think, this huge leap in terms of technology that allowed us to connect one-on-one, like cell phones, for example. But now we had the Great Conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn at the very beginning of Aquarius. And this to me, and now with Pluto moving over that 0 degree Aquarius, where the Great Conjunction took place, the preparation for this new understanding that started taking place right at the beginning of the decade, it's almost like we are right now in this great transitory time. But once we get into 2025, we start glimpsing it. But 2026, 2027, there is this whole new world that I see opening up. And I really believe that the world we have at the end of the 2020s will be a very different world than we had at the beginning of the 2020s. And it was, the last series of great conjunctions in air that brought with it the printing press, right? It brought with it these advancements in being able to send mail and things like that. It brought greater rates of literacy around the board. But now with these series of conjunctions, and I was talking about this with Rick Levine, my dear Rick Levine, another one of our living legends. And I was
Yes.
saying to him, I think that we are just going to like take the next leap in terms of, what's happening with how information is shared and experienced. And he was saying, yeah, we will go paperless. We went from oral to paper the last time, and now we're going to go from paper to a paperless world. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that makes so much sense, but that's going to show up in so many different ways. And I think we haven't even glimpsed what that is going to likely look like. Well, we've got little glimpses, but there's going to
Right.
be lots of surprises, put it that way. I think big changes in our understanding of, and my hope is that one of the changes is going to be like greater internet access around the world, right? And yeah, shifts in equality. My hope is along those lines as well. But remember, equality looks like different things to different people.
It
And so
does.
that'll be interesting to see how we understand that as a collective, how we move through those changes. But there will be lots of reasons to be inspired, I think, as well. Yeah.
I hope so. That does help clear things up, makes it look more hopeful, especially.
Yeah,
And yeah,
it's a
thank you for
grand
sharing that.
sextile. Yeah, it is hopeful. It's a grand sextile. And think about all those times in history. Again, look at where we are today. It's better than where we were yesterday. It's better than where we were 100 years ago, which really is
Exactly.
nothing in the span of human history, right? There's
Mm-hmm.
this futurist. He's not an astrologer. He's a futurist. His name is Ray Kurzweil. And Ray Kurzweil said that all growth is exponential, meaning that what used to take us like a technology, we needed 100 years to develop. Once developed, the next great technology, takes 50 years. And after that, it takes 25 years. And now we're at a point where there are these huge shifts and progress being made exponentially from day to day, from instant to instant. And he was saying, like, within our lifetimes, we were going to see how machinery becomes part and how technology becomes a part of us physically,
Mm-hmm.
world. And so he gave the example of one day we might just like take a pill that contains some technology, and as a result of taking that pill and that pill staying inside of us, our bodies work better. And we already see this, right? Like pacemakers, for example, right? People are
Yeah.
already incorporating technologies into their bodies. And so, I mean, I think that we may see leaps forward along those lines as well. That'll be intriguing to see. But also on another level, let me say this, that is, we have had the collective experience of the outer planets in Earth and water for so long that some of us might not even really remember what life was like before all the outer planets were only Earth and water. And they are about to move into fire and air.
Mm-hmm.
That is huge. Think about what water represents and earth. These are water and earth tend to be traditional, right? They tend to
Exactly.
be energies that are practically focused. Water seeks security, earth seeks practical gains, but air and fire are so different. Fire is like, I exist, I create, I feel, it's enough. It doesn't care so much about the security as much as the experience itself.
Yes.
Air moves beyond that, and it's like, you know what, all that matters is what happens up here. Like the body doesn't even exist with air, right? And so that I think is going to be a huge shift that a lot of us are going to feel. The only thing that's going to be in earth is actually going to be Chiron. Chiron will be squaring Pluto in the midst of all of this, with Chiron in Taurus, with this great sextile taking place. And I actually think that might be our saving grace. And the reason I say that is because if it's just trines, if it's just, this beautiful energy of Pluto trine Uranus and that's it, trines can make us lazy. But
Oh,
squares
yes.
mean we got to do something. We feel like we got to do something. We got to move forward. We got to put in effort. And that means stuff happens. That means activity. It means stuff gets done.
That call to action.
Yeah,
Do
exactly.
something.
Yeah. And consider this as well. It is going to be in 2026, Jupiter stepping into the energy of Leo. And when Jupiter is there in Leo, lighting up that grand sextile, right? And we're going to have Mars there as well. We're going to have like this moment where we're going to see literally a configuration that's called the Star of David configuration.
Mhm.
And all these big planets speaking to each other, working in harmony like that. I think that's going to be like really a big breakthrough moment as well. Very intriguing to consider.
Wow.
Yeah,
I'll have to look at the charts for that. In my own studies, I don't really I feel scared looking too far ahead, but I think I'm gonna look ahead.
really.
Yeah.
I love looking way ahead because I like those big human, like the human evolution transit. That's why I wrote a book about the outer planets, because
Yes.
they are these huge transits and they're so big. And I'm a very big picture kind of girl. I have a Sag moon. What can I say?
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
No, but I think you have really inspired me and hopefully the other group members as well to keep looking ahead. And that's, that dance of astrology of looking to the past and then to look to see what's ahead. It's
Yeah.
you really have to look both ways, it seems. But it seems like that those are all of our comments. Rosie Wilson sends you a little heart emoji. Thank you,
Thank you, Rosie
Rosie.
Wilson. Thank you so much,
Okay.
you guys, for the love and support of this book. It means so much to me. Every book, like, it comes from a place of love, but wow, and thank you to Kepler and your book club and everything for
Yeah.
choosing this. Thank you for
And you
that.
can really tell that it's written with so much love. And I just really appreciate that, especially.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay. And thank you, everyone, for
Thank
watching and participating in the group discussions throughout the month. For October, we're reading Astrology's Magical Nodes of the Moon by Carmen Turner Schott and Bernie Ashman. We'll begin discussions on that book starting next weekend. But if you're still reading of Ravens and Dragonflies, you're welcome to continue participating in our past discussion posts for however long you want to. And again, thank you to Nadiya for joining us. And I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their week.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Misty.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.